Patch 10.11 is just around the corner, so you know exactly what we're going to get into. We're going to be breaking down the top broken things that you need to abuse on this patch. And this time, it's mostly champion stuff because a lot of champions are getting some really good buffs. And I think the like and subscribe buttons are getting a little bit tired of being smashed and destroyed, so why don't you just give them a little love tap and let's just jump right in. First on the list, broken thing number 1, and not gonna lie guys, this one's kind of free, just pick up the new Volibear. If you already played old Volibear, you're not gonna really have any problems playing the new Volibear. He's different in only like 4 relatively small ways, so you could be totally fine getting right into him as soon as the patch drops. He'll be even better than the old Volibear was. Seriously, this pattern exists with almost every champion that's ever been released or reworked. Riot comes in, slaps together an absolutely overloaded meme lord champion who proceeds to go crazy rampaging through the rift in every game that they aren't banned. Usually this happens for a few reasons, so if you aren't planning on playing Volibear, make sure you pay attention here so that you know what to do. First, you get to destroy people on Volibear because they didn't read his new kit and they don't understand it well. The second thing is that a ton of people won't understand how to play around him in the first place because even though they might know what he does, they can't predict everything just yet because they aren't sure what his play pattern is like. Lastly, nobody's going to be able to tell just how strong he is in lane or in the jungle in terms of overall strength at level 3, at level 6, and when he power spikes, so you won't really have a good idea of how to fight him. So let's break down a quick few tips that you need to look out for in order to make sure you aren't getting destroyed by the random Volibear pick from the enemy team. First of all is that when he casts his E, you're not going to know where it's going to come down until later on. So be careful and make sure that you aren't getting faker predicted and get killed even though you flash. If you're unsure how to do this, don't worry because you actually already know. Echo W is basically the same mechanic as Volibear's E, and so the same way you play against Echo with that is the same way you play against Volibear. Secondly, Volibear's W gets really strong and also heals him if he manages to cast it twice on you. So you want to make sure that you're only taking quick short trades against Volibear. He's very strong in long ones because his E damage is going to come in, his E shield is going to come in, his W damage and healing is going to come in. You got to make sure you get out of there before he gets the chance to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to be big lightning bear food, and I mean, come on, you don't want to be feeding this man because when he's big, he's going to be hard to deal with. Even though that applies to most champions, especially here, because again, you won't be exactly sure of how strong he is because you never got a chance to play against it before. But enough about Volibear, let's talk about somebody else who just got reworked recently. Fiddlesticks is another broken thing that you need to be taking into your games, seriously. He's going to be an insanely broken choice, there is no doubt about that. He's already a very solidly performing jungler and now he's getting buffed for who knows why, 200 plus years of design experience I guess. He will easily be a top 5 champion no matter what elo you're in right now. And with him being one of the best junglers in high elo, it's pretty concerning to see where he's gonna go, giving him such potent changes. Mastering playing around the fog of war and enemy vision, specifically around Fiddlesticks' passive and unique trinket, is gonna be key to taking advantage of everything that he has to offer. Just also make sure that you're doing really efficient clears on him. That means doing your red buff and raptors at the same time, doing your gromp and your blue buff at the same time, in order to make sure that you're going through things as fast as possible and giving Fiddlesticks the best chance he has to fight other junglers, as well as gank. Keep in mind that when you're double clearing camps like that, you're also speeding up your level gain in the later game, because when you hit that level 9 breakpoint where camps start giving more experience from that change a couple patches ago, Fiddlesticks gets to accelerate even more compared to before. If you happen to be fighting against a Fiddlesticks or even a Volibear, the champions that do well into those two actually overlap quite a bit. Really, you're looking for people who can kite well or people who dive and fight really well. Excellent split pushers are also a viable option when considering these two, as being able to take some pressure off of your team from a Fiddlesticks or a Volibear is always really good, because they're really great in big grouped up scenarios. I can give you 2 great examples just from the A champions on the list. Aatrox is an excellent example of somebody who wants to dive, hit people with multiple knockups, do a ton of damage, and not allow them to fight back because he's constantly interrupting what they're trying to do. This is both good against Volibear, as Volibear simply cannot do enough to Aatrox in the later stages of the game, or even the middle of the game in order to threaten him. And for Fiddlesticks, well, if he gets hit by one Aatrox Q, he's probably getting hit by everything else that Aatrox has to offer, and that's a big problem for him, because between 4 knockups, a slow, a pullback, and all that jazz, there's no way he could drain him, fear him, or even ulti for that matter. Azir is the opposite side of the coin, where he mostly focuses on kiting. He has his slow from his Q, mobility with his E, a pushback from his R that can easily interrupt or stifle something like a Volibear or a Fiddlesticks that are charging in. You get the idea, and it becomes very easy after Azir counters their initial engage to DPS them down and completely erase them from existence. It might require some slick quick thinking with some really nice Shurima shuffling going on, but it can definitely still be pulled off, even if their diving might be pretty annoying. Now, I've mentioned a lot already, whether it be specific mechanics revolving around Volibear, or the macro game that's necessary in order to play Fiddlesticks really effectively and absolutely destroy everybody across the entire map, or even how to play against them with the champion-specific mechanics that I mentioned just between Aatrox and Azir. You got a lot to take in. To find more information like that and guides on exactly what I've been explaining in order to help you learn, improve, and win in your games, then seriously, go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons of guides, all made by challenger level players, and we have everything from macro guides to micro guides and even champion specific guides. Could be a lane that you're looking to learn, we got that too. You want to learn something in the jungle, that's there as well. Anything and everything that you're looking to learn and improve on is there for you. And hey, when you see somebody making mistakes that we talk about or not using something really important that you know on a specific champion that you learn, that's how you know you're literally experiencing the GameLeap difference. But now that you got the GLD in your favor, let's talk about some other stuff that's really broken. Third on this list is going to be champions who can build any Zeal item, but really specifically, anybody who can build Phantom Dancer. As an AD carry, as a top laner, whatever damage role you're trying to fill, buy the item if you can on your champ. Seriously, the amount of movement speed that this thing is giving you is absolutely mind-numbingly unacceptable. This is the one item buy to turn you into a speedy nightmare that wins every single 1v1 and is incredibly difficult to take down. Having 14% movement speed on an item makes me sick. There is no other way to describe it. There are a ton of champions who can make use of this. Hybrid Twisted Fate is an amazing example for the mid lane. You go like Triforce Blade of the Rune King Phantom Dancer, and then what does anybody do? If they're a tank, you shred their health. If they're a squishy, you kill them because they can't kill you. You have more DPS than them. Any AD carry could buy Phantom Dancer, Yasuo, Jax, Tryndamere, Fiora, Gangplank, Aaron Graves. I could run down the alphabet here, and there'd be a lot of champions. And all these champions and more have access to more or easy to get juicy movement speed to make them even more annoying. Tryndamere's already super hard to catch because he crits something twice and spins to the next universe. Jax has really low cooldown mobility in the later stages of the game. Fiora's Q doesn't have a cooldown, at least the way I can see it, it doesn't seem to have one, and you get the idea. That's before we even talk about the attack speed or the crit that the item gives, and we briefly mentioned the shield in terms of the survivability, but really the movement speed is also amazing for surviving too. Just while you're on it, make sure you don't buy Sterix as well as Phantom Dancer, because that's anti-synergy. They have the same unique passive. Don't be that guy. People make the mistake way more often than I like to see. And for those of you who may not be convinced that the extra movement speed is going to be really stupid, let me put it to you this way with some numbers. Every champion in the game has at least 300 movement speed. Let's just go with the nice round even number so that nothing gets too complicated, alright? If you take the 7% flat movement speed that Phantom Dancer gives you, you have 21 bonus movement speed. Congratulations, you have an extra boot's worth of movement speed, and boots can't stack. That's pretty cool. But then if you are ever, and I mean ever, even so much as breathing on an enemy champion once, you automatically get double the movement speed, and you now have 14%, which means you have 42 bonus movement speed. If you stack this with any other movement speed increasing effect, whether it be a Phage, a Triforce, a Black Cleaver, a Blade of the Ruined King, active movement speed steal, the teleport movements, I don't care. You are going at Mach 37 and your opponents look like snails compared to you, and you can either decide to run away with that movement speed or to keep going and run them down until they're dead. All right, we went pretty deep there. Let's bring it back and let's talk about the last thing on the list here. And this is kind of like multiple in one because they're all kind of the same thing. We're gonna be talking about some AD carries, specifically the ones that didn't just get the health buffs, which means we're gonna be talking about Vayne, Lucian, Kalista, and Tristana on this patch. Remember also that they have those movement speed buffs from the Zeal, so yeah, I'm not having a great time right now. I hate this, but Vayne is a champion who has an insane late game, and her buffs target her early game and her late game, and buffing both on a champion like Vayne is a really spooky thing to think about. Combo this with the buff to Zeal items, like the juicy Phantom Dancer movement speed, and all of a sudden you have a really hard to hit, hard to kill, hard hitting AD carry that completely shreds your team to pieces, and that is very frustrating. don't let this go through in your games, and if you do, you better abuse her as hard as you can, whether that be top lane TPing on top of her at like level 6, doing a mid roam, ganking her repeatedly as a jungler, or just lane kingdoming her as an AD carry or support. Make sure you keep her down. Lucian, on the other hand, gets a buff to his crit, and it makes it so that his burst has some seriously insane potential, and in the later stages when he has more attack speed with lower cooldowns, significantly buffs his damage against squishy targets. Being able to double tap and chunk somebody for what is basically 3 auto attacks in technically 1 is very big. Make sure you don't underestimate his damage both in the early game and the late game on the patch, because if you do actually get snowballed, it can be very hard to come back against the Lucian, especially if he's doing that much more damage and just deletes you within 2 auto attacks, leaving you very sad as you never even got to play the game. Now moving on to Kalista. Kalista's a really weird champion because she's an early game lane bully in a kind of strange way, and she also gets a big buff to her early game, which is twice as strange, especially when you consider that Riot said that they never wanted to incentivize Kalista to only be played with her support at all times. This is because of the synergy on her W, but that's exactly what they're buffing. They're buffing the percentage health damage that her W offers, and that's a big deal. An extra 4% of your max health gone might end up killing you, especially early on, where you might have just barely survived before, and the AD carry health buffs aren't going to be enough to compensate that difference. Riot also made the weird ghost war thingy that everybody glitches into the dragon pit cost 0 mana, which is just kind of nice, I guess, but it never really was that big of a deal. It never really got used before, likely because it cost mana, but also because it doesn't really do very much. So we'll have to see if anybody really uses it for any real reason, otherwise you might just be using it and not getting much done. It can still be nice for scouting, and especially in the late game, it's basically a free blue trinket, but earlier on in the game, it doesn't really have much use, especially if it costs mana, but now that it doesn't, it might be nice. Lastly, let's take a look at Tristana, and this one definitely seems the most underwhelming, but let's break into some numbers real quick. Let's look at Ashe and Aphelios since they are right next to each other on this nice little chart that we have on the wiki page. We're looking at the attack speed ratio, the attack speed at level 18, and the attack speed bonus needed to hit the attack speed cap at level 18. As you can see, Aphelios is quite a bit worse than Ashe, but when you compare Aphelios to Tristana, they're very similar. Without even having to break down the math, you can easily tell by the difference between Ashe and Aphelios and Tristana that this is going to be a really, really good buff. Just by knowing that attack speed ratio affects how effective each point of attack speed you get is, then you could tell that Tristana's attack speed needed to hit the cap is going to get cut down by quite a bit. And even if you reduce it by just 10%, she is going to love it. As somebody who has a ridiculously long 110% attack speed buff in an ability, Tristana can easily slap out some devastating damage, and this only helps her do that at all points in the game. And we're like completely ignoring runes and everything else in here that she can get attack speed from, and just really focusing on what it means as a stat on its own. Combo it with maybe some lethal tempo or some hail of blades, maybe even just press the attack and making people go boom with your E, then you've got a really convincing amount of damage coming out thanks to this buff. But that's everything broken on patch 10.11 that we're going to talk about here. A large chunk of the changes on this patch are really aimed at nerfing some of the really high performers in a few roles, and also way more focused on AD carry, with pretty much everybody getting some kind of buff one way or another. Just make sure you take advantage of the broken picks and also take advantage of the broken GameLeap website. Seriously guys, you're not going to find anything that goes more in depth and teaches you more about the game than what we have to offer. We have guides made by challenger level players on everything from macro to micro and everything in between, and I do mean everything. We're always working on making more and better content with our challenger level content creators, and because of that, we are always trying to dish out more stuff for you guys to learn and take into your games in order to win. And if you're not sure what you want to learn, then still, you should absolutely go check it out. Just the amount of stuff that we have up there that goes into super fine detail, and even just VOD reviews of pro and challenger level players and how to apply the concepts that they use in that game are there for people who aren't really sure where they need to go. Even if it doesn't directly apply to a champion that you play, you still know what the enemy champion that you're playing against can do or might want to do. And that's important because the more general understanding you have, the better you're going to be. But anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.